Do you ever feel bogged down and overwhelmed with advice?
We are living in a time where good tips, tricks, and hacks have never been more abundant.
From Facebook to podcasts, mentors to 6-week courses, it seems like everywhere we look now, someone is telling us what to avoid or how to improve.
So where do you start?
We thought we would start with taking some advice, not giving out more.
We're going to road test just a few of the world's ideas and suggestions, seeing how easy they are to put into practice. And we'll meet a few experts along the way.
This is Advice Takers and Habit Makers.
Awesome. Hello. Good morning, Sarah. And we've got our lovely Tanya as well.
Welcome,
Good morning,
Tanya.
ladies.
How is everyone this morning?
Pretty good.
Well, today we're talking about mental health, mental fitness, mental resilience, mental toughness. And I think it's, certainly an interesting time to be talking about this. And we've all had to prove to ourselves how mentally athletic, how mentally robust we are, I suppose. Yeah, but pretty good. How are you going?
Yeah, going well. I mean, looking back to the topic that we set ourselves last time, so it's this whole concept of being mentally fit and everything. And you and I were talking about the whole idea of maybe like trying out some puzzles or Sudoku or all that kind of thing. I'm laughing because I kind of suck at those kind of things, but not to put myself down because we speak nice to ourselves as well, because we've talked about that as well. But I didn't really go so well with it, but I did some other things, and I think you probably did too. But so how did you go with it?
I did exactly the same. I suppose I tried to, work on my mental health in other ways, but I found myself not finding enough time to do those programs and those those apps that are meant to help you in that regard. So I was a bit the same as you. I tried to build it into what I was doing rather than build out and try and build, do other things, I suppose.
So what did you do? For me, I was doing like I've been doing, and we've talked about this a bit, a lot of studying. So my mind is like full of stuff, and I really keep myself busy, and I think that's a good way to be mentally healthy. We'll ask Tanya about this in a minute, but you're pretty much on the same line as me, aren't you, in terms of studying and filling your mind with facts and information and just keeping things going and desiring to.
Yes. And I think I think there's a big difference in learning. What I've realised over, the past few months, there's a huge difference in learning things that you're not interested in and learning things that you are interested in, because, having that passion for your subject matter and the course that you're doing and what you're finding out, it couldn't be more different to, doing, a course or a subject that you're just sort of doing just to get the piece of paper, or doing it because someone's told you it's a good idea, or because you feel like it's, it's essential to your profession, or, any of those other reasons that aren't sort of passion driven, I suppose. So for me, this study that I've been doing recently has just been just a completely different experience to what I've done in the past. And it sort of shows, I suppose, in terms of the time that I'm giving to it and the marks that I want to get and the type of pretentious, mature age student I've become. So so that's what I've definitely figured out, that learning actually isn't the pain in the backside that I thought it always was. Once you find something you do want to learn, I suppose that's my biggest takeaway.
Once you have that passion and desire, and you're really almost embedding yourself in it.
Yeah.
Almost. And I can see that in you as well, which is kind of exciting, because it's probably where I'm at as well. Maybe that's why I didn't get those puzzles done as well, because it just doesn't interest me, but I can see how important that is. But we did play Monopoly together. That's a win as a family. And we played Cluedo as well. I've gone all out and bought a whole load of games to play as a family, and we've actually started doing that. So that's that's good for our mindset, isn't it? And our mental health.
Absolutely. And I've my son Flynn has got, well, I probably shouldn't be admitting this to the world at large, but my son in his lockdown boredom has really got into phone games, and so he and I have been playing them together as well. So you could say that would be, that's a little bit of mental exercise, I suppose.
What about something like Fortnite and Roblox that my kids are on? I'm like saying, nah, it's just a waste of time, but they love it and they interact on it. And as long as they're not on it all the time, I think it's okay, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'm just amazed at his problem-solving skills. And I suppose, you don't want to jump up and down and say that playing games on the phone is good for anyone, overall. But, there are, like they're really into Lego as well, and that's good for problem-solving. And, I do think there are probably not long-term benefits of playing them, but they do test you in ways and help you cope with losing as well. That's one thing that I've noticed, in terms of what he's been doing, is that he has to cope with losing. And I think that's a good skill for kids to have in general, not expecting to win every time. But it is what it is. It's the hand that we're dealt, and we're doing the best we can. I think everyone is.
Yeah, and it's true. It's also, this whole concept of you actually needing to get stuff done. So you kind of just let, like kids do it. And then you're like, oh my goodness, it's like a few hours later. Shame on me for admitting that. But, so we've had the opposite, where we've had like a lot of intense behavior from kids. And then we've had to go, okay, you're off it for a while. So then it's more of a treat when they actually do get it. But this is like going off way on a tangent.
Well, yes and no. It's what we have to do. Mental survival, mental endurance. That's what you could call it. So, it is all related.
That's true. This is probably a good time for us to introduce the lovely Tanya.
Yes.
So you and I think we both met her, I would say nearly 2 years ago. I remember we were at a conference, introduced to Tanya, and since then we've gotten to know her quite well. And I'm loving her expertise on this topic of mental health first aid. I did her course, I think it's now a year ago, and you've done it more recently, I think.
Yeah. Certificate probably 4 or 5 months ago, maybe now.
And she's just a wealth of knowledge, so we want to bring her into the topic and hear her views on it. But we're going to start off just asking Tanya. Hello, Tanya, by the way. We're pulling you into the conversation rather than just having you sit out.
It's been really interesting listening to you both talking about I guess the dilemmas that parents are facing at the moment. And the struggle is real. So I think there's worse things that you could do than allow your kids to play games like the ones that you were describing, because there is some value in the that sort of, like you said, solving puzzles and getting their brains to think in different ways. So
Well, Tanya, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I've shared one aspect, but tell us a bit about your background, who you are, where you come from, all that in a nutshell.
I should have been prepared, shouldn't I? I should have prepared ahead of time for this. I'm not great.
We thought you'd probably know. We thought you'd be the subject
of yourself.
I just often do struggle to, I guess, introduce myself. When you put me on the spot there to tell you all about myself. So where to start? I guess I'm your garden variety, mum, and I've got 2 teenage sons. And originally I actually migrated from South America, from Uruguay. So when I was about 4 and a half. And so I guess I've been here most of my life. And I guess that I've ended up being a mental health first aid instructor through, you know, one of those winding roads that life takes you down. I guess that in my 20s, I had some experiences with, you know, family members who were struggling with major depressive disorder. And even though I, you know, always had an interest in psychology, I also, I guess, had various other interests. And I did go to uni, and I was studying at the time a Bachelor of Arts majoring in psychology, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with myself. And at the time, actually, that I had started my degree, my parents were thinking about going back to Uruguay. And it kind of influenced me in a way to take a break from my uni course, because it was not something that was going to be transferable when I got, if we did go back to Uruguay. So it was going to be, you know, me having to do some study to, you know, to make it valuable in my, you know, in Uruguay. So I was kind of like, is that really what I want to do? And, you know, spend all this time studying this degree, which may not be valued, you know, at the time. So I guess also with the benefit of hindsight, I wish that I had kept at it. But instead, you know, I got a job and ended up, you know, having a couple of decades of jobs in health insurance and, you know, different, you know, admin roles and so on. But when I had kids, I actually decided that I wanted to make a change. So while my kids were little, I was a stay-at-home mum for 5 years. But then when I had them both in childcare, I had one in childcare and one, actually, no, sorry, they were both in school at this point. I actually did the Lifeline training, which they used to call telephone counsellor training, but now it's called crisis supporter training. So I did that training because I wanted to kind of dip my toe into an area that I wanted to really go into. And anyway, I ended up with Lifeline for a number of years. So I actually started as a crisis supporter, became a supervisor, you know, mentor, facilitator, trainer. And then at that point, I had done the training to become a mental health first aid instructor. So that was in 2013. I became a mental health first aid instructor. And I guess that I just loved that aspect of just training groups and training people to use a lot of the skills that I'd learned, you know, in my time at Lifeline. And I actually did start a social work degree. And it's really interesting listening to you, Sarah, because I know what you mean. And I mean, I thought social work was kind of a great compromise for me, because I had actually applied for a psychology degree at various unis and I'd gotten in, and there was always something stopping me. And it was, because, you know, I don't have enough childcare or this or that. There was always something that was sort of, whether I was a subconscious way of putting excuses or barriers in the way, or I don't know what it was. But I think that there was always something that told me that wasn't quite what I wanted to do in terms of, you know, yes, I could get a psychology degree and use that for whatever purpose. If you want to actually, I guess, become a registered psychologist or clinical psychologist, you know, that's a really long process and well worth it, mind you. But social work for me, I guess, because you can also specialize in mental health related social work. So I guess for me, it was sort of resonated with me more. But once I started doing the course, you know, it sort of wasn't exactly what I thought it'd be like. And believe me, like, I know a lot of social workers and I think it's an amazing profession. And so it wasn't really about, you know, that I didn't value social work or social workers or anything like that. Again, it was something wasn't quite resonating with me.
Yeah.
So I switched degrees at that point to something that I thought I could still use, because I really was at that point, my side hustle, which was being a mental health first aid trainer, started to become more of my main hustle. So I actually took a break from, I actually quit all my roles at Lifeline, because I had various roles. that I did, you know, in sort of part-time capacities. And I took a break for about 18 months. But, you know, Lifeline's kind of one of these things where it's in my heart now. And so after about an 18 months break, I went back and I redid the training as a crisis supporter. And I'm back on the phones now, just as a garden, well, I say garden variety, but very important role, volunteer crisis supporter. So I love doing that. So that's something that it's just a passion, and I sort of see myself doing that for as long as I can. But I really am now more focused on expanding my training business, you know, so mental health training essentials. And really that's about, you know, taking that training that I've enjoyed so much, that I've been doing for a number of years, just a little bit to the next level. Because really right now, and you know, when I met you ladies is when I sort of started on this path, and there's been so many bumps in the road and so many, as I don't have to tell you, so many, I guess, you know, setbacks, and going from plan A to plan B to plan C to plan D, and managing my own mental health along the way, and managing the family dynamics of everybody being at home. And, you know, that saying, I think I said it to you before we started recording, you know, they say never work with children and animals. And now we're all pretty much, not all, but many of us, not all, of course, but many of us are working with children and animals literally during our working days. So, there's been, I guess, and you know, when you start expanding your business, there's always huge learning curves, and I'm certainly going through those. So I think I've got a really off track and told you a really long-winded story, which I do apologize for, but see, you need to stop me, you need to curb my enthusiasm.
No, it's awesome, because it's giving us information on you, and something that I'm interested, and it's probably way off track too, but I'm interested how you mentioned when you were speaking then that you've had to watch your own mental health. I'm interested to know what kind of tips or tricks you have for doing that, because I mean, you know, we have them ourselves. Doing study as part of that, because it gives us that break and, you know, movement away from the mundane, because we're always doing the same thing. But what do you do to guard your mental health during, you know, quite what's the word, like it is quite an intense period of time at the moment, you know, hopefully it's a season, but yeah, what's some things that you do in terms of keeping yourself mentally fit, or whatever word we want to use?
I think for me, one thing that I've said from the get-go is remembering self-compassion. So, you know, one of the questions that I ask people at times when having a chat with them, say that I've got my mental health first aider hat on, would be when people are being quite tough on themselves. So, you know, I didn't get everything done, you know, you know, people get thoughts like I'm not a good mum because I'm letting my kids spend too long on the phone apps, right? Or whatever it might be. So for me, I think a big key for me has always been to practice self-compassion in the same way that I would if a dear friend, somebody that I really valued, that I really, you know, had a strong connection with, that I, you know, wanted only the best for them. What would I say to them? What would I think about them, and try to think those thoughts about myself, and, you know, say those things to myself, you know. So some of it is about what is called reframing. So, okay, I didn't get everything done, but how about focusing on some of the things that I did get done? And look, depending on where you are along what we call so you might have heard of the concept, the mental health continuum. And that's something that's in the mental health first aid work course that you did, Sarah. In the one that you did, Larissa, we didn't really touch on it, because we did the conversations about suicide, you might recall, which is a shorter one. So we didn't go into that too much. But that mental health continuum, when we think about, you know, where am I along there? And for those people that want to find out more about that, I don't know if you've got show notes, we can put something in there, or people can easily even Google that, to be honest, and have a look at mental health continuum. But basically, sometimes when you're in a space where you're not traveling too well, the best you might be able to do on a certain day is get up, have a cup of coffee. If you're lucky, maybe have a shower, make sure people are, staying alive, getting some food into them, staying hydrated, whatever it might be. But just, it might be about the bare minimum, right? On some days. On other days, you feel like you've got enough motivation, energy, whatever it might be. You're in a better space, and that can vary with each individual, from day to day, from week to week, month to month, year to year. And so that's why when I talk about reframing, it might be, well, what did I achieve today? And look, if all I managed to do was stay alive and stay hydrated and fed, look, that it is what it is, right? Because it's just so natural for us to be really almost, what's the word I want to use, kind of oscillating more than we might have been in the past. We are essentially, I think, quite often at the moment overstimulated with information. And so staying mentally well for me, I guess, is about trying to cut out some of the noise, cutting out social media that I find, negative, for example. And that doesn't mean that I'm burying my head in the sand and not, informing myself, but I think that there are ways to inform ourselves and ways that we can just maybe stop and think, is this behavior helpful? Is it helpful to engage with certain online discussions? Is it helpful to engage with people that are essentially trolling or whatever it might be? If social media is your thing. I mean, I've got friends that are not even on social media, but I do tend to go on there because I actually find that I focus on the positives of it. So that's how I'm, I guess in the 2 years we've known each other, we've bonded a lot in those shared groups that we've been in that have been really supportive and, positive, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so like you, that the whole concept of social media can become, it just becomes really negative at times. And then there's this feeling sometimes I've just got to say something, and then I have to pull myself back and go, no, actually I don't. And I don't want to go there because I don't need to convince anyone to think the same as, do you know, like it's like almost this drive, and some people are so in there and you just see it going back and forth. And I'm like, nah, I'm staying out of it. And then there's the whole ability for us to block, people and all that kind of thing, or put them on quiet, because sometimes it just plays with your head. So I'm so along the same lines as you. And I know Sarah's the same. Sometimes you've got to step back, or, have a day where you're not on there at all, or, because it like 10 years ago, we wouldn't have even been talking about this concept, although I don't know what year Facebook and stuff came out, but I'm sure it was
7 that all this kicked off. So it's been around for 14 years.
But we weren't all on there. Like, I don't think I remember someone sending me a link or something to it, and I was like, nah, I don't want to have anything to do with that. But like, it's become such an area, and I'm sure it's an area where there's a whole lot of people having mental health issues as well around it. I don't know. Do you have any kind of like idea of any sort of stats or like of that sort of thing, Tanya?
So just stats around what? Sorry, Larissa?
Just like social media or what's happening at the moment. Like I get the idea that people are finding it harder, and it's made worse by social media.
Yeah, look, no, I have to confess, I probably don't have stats around that, but I think that one thing that we've identified just in what you were saying and what we were just sort of reflecting on there is that it can be positive, or it can have a positive effect or negative effect on your mental health. So if we're thinking about mental health and mental fitness and mental resilience and all of that, I think it's got a huge capacity for good, and it's got, of course, we know, capacity for really being quite harmful to people. And I guess without going into detail, I mean, I can certainly think off the top of my head, where it's been even to the point of driving people to harm themselves or even worse. So, it's actually and while people might say, well, it's that person's choice to engage or not engage, I think that it's difficult because, you know, a lot of the time what people are seeking when they're on social media is connection, right? And if you can imagine right now, well, not if you can imagine, you don't have to imagine, but as you can probably, I guess you probably know, right now we're wanting any way we can find to stay connected and to feel connected, right? And so social media can play a big part in that. Again, I have friends that aren't on social media at all. I guess this is an interesting tangent that we've gone into, but you know, in terms of, I guess it's important for us to think about if we are engaging on social media right now because we are seeking connection, you know, what is helpful, what is not. So, you know, when you talked about what tips I could give is things like journaling. And I have to confess, a lot of the times I don't really have one journal that I go and write in every day, but I kind of have my own little process, which sometimes I'm on the go. And even if I just jot a note in my phone, or even if I just jot a note somewhere, but for me, I don't know what it is, the process of writing something is enough. It doesn't even have to be in a journal, but I find that writing, it's just me, right? So other people might relate, that just writing something, the fact that I've written it is, and even if I never look at it again, it just helps sort of the, you know, my reflecting process. So, you know, being reflective in your day-to-day life as much as you can be. So what went well today? What didn't go so well? And what would I do differently tomorrow? I often say, people talk about what can I do better tomorrow? And of course we can look, however you phrase it, whatever works for you, but something along those lines. You know, what did I do well? What didn't I do so well? What can I do to be stronger tomorrow, to be better tomorrow? You know, what could I try to be differently? What could I do differently tomorrow? I'm a bit tongue-tied there. But I like to use what would I do differently, because as much as tomorrow I might do what is the gold standard, recommended, evidence-based thing to do at the moment, I don't have a crystal ball to really know if that is going to, you know, result in the outcome that I'm looking for, you know, whatever that outcome might be, whether it's coping better with life at the moment, or, you know, communicating in a better way, or whatever it might be. But I think that reflecting, even if you do it once a week, you know, just taking some time to reflect, even like what went well this week, you know, and what didn't go so well, etc.
I find that writing lists, it's not the same, obviously, and there are people who write lists who are, you know, born list writers and will continue that till they're very old. But I've found that in this time, writing lists actually gives me a sense of control back as well. So it's kind of, it's really blocking out what everyone else is doing, what they're prioritizing, and it just brings me back to, okay, well, these are the things that I actually want to achieve. And, you know, you've got to try and, you know, put in things that are within reach as well as maybe slightly out of reach. So you know, you feel like you're not just taking the mick and making it too easy for yourself. But yeah, but I suppose just having, you know, bringing it back to, okay, this is what I want to achieve. This is what I need to do. This is, you know, and I can actually go and cross those things off. But if I do it on my phone or I write it on the computer, it doesn't have the same effect. So there is something about writing that that does have that effect for some reason. It's just a more sort of organic, mind cleansing process to actually write that down on paper and then be able to, you know, it's not a matter of just hitting delete and deleting something out. It's like you can actually draw the line through it or tick it off. I don't know what it is. Somebody will know, but it's...
Well, I do have a teacher friend that was telling me the ins and outs of it, and that there are some, there is strong evidence to say that physically writing does, and look, I wish she was here to explain it, but I'm going to confess, I'm not a teacher and I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically that there are advantages around physically writing things down compared to using a keyboard or, you know, finger swiping or whatever it is, you know, to actually, right. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
We use different parts of our brain and, you know, different, it's activating different learning pathways, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I love how you talk about this, the whole concept of self-compassion as well. I think that's hugely important at the moment. And I've got friends who talk about it as, giving yourself some grace.
That's right.
Like
that's another way to think about it. That's right. There's actually a person called Kristen Neff. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. So her books on self-compassion are quite well known. If people, I don't know if you want to include that in your show notes, but
yes, please.
Yeah. So, and I do apologize if I haven't pronounced her name properly, but I pronounce it as I see it, which is Kristen Neff, N-E-F-F. So yeah, she's got some books, which are available in audio books as well. So that could be useful for some people.
And The Comfort Book by Matt Haig is another really good one as well. And that's all about, just not cutting yourself slack, but just, getting rid of sort of self-judgment and self-criticism and looking for what your strengths and your, your reserves and your achievements are. That's another good one, I think.
Okay, cool. If we can put that in the show notes, that sounds like a good one.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, do you have any other questions you want to ask Tanya?
I think a lot of what I wanted to ask we've really covered, and this is one thing that I do really love about Tanya is that you can ask her one question and she will take half an hour to answer it, but it's in the most, she just, and this is, can I just do a plug for her mental health first aid course as well at this point, because the way that she talks, I actually feel calmer listening to you. Like, I think you should narrate audio books or do, recorded courses or something.
Which is quite ironic, because actually, if you came to my household, I don't know if my 2 teenage boys would agree with you, but there you go.
Like, I just feel, I think you are absolutely on this earth to do what you do and do it so well, because I think just even, and obviously being, doing the lifeline work that you do as well, it's so calming just to listen to you and, and just to go on this journey with you, even when you were talking about, how you ended up where you are and, and being in Australia and Uruguay, and it's just, I don't know, I could definitely just listen to you for hours. And I know you and I have very long, curly conversations. And
winding conversations.
Curly conversations too. So we could probably, we could turn this into a box set, 6 hours of us three talking.
It's not like we're doing heaps of other stuff.
I do apologize, because this is what I meant by I should have prepared beforehand, because when I sort of started going, okay, well, this is my story, I thought, oh my gosh, I've just turned it into my autobiography.
That's okay, we'll just cut it out.
Yeah, can you? Because if you can actually reduce that, I would really appreciate it, because it was not intended to go into that level of detail.
It's totally fine. But we'd like to know, what are you doing now? So what are you currently working on, and what can people connect with you, or what space can they connect with you in?
Okay, so at the moment I am running workshops, but what I found is that for me, it actually works better if somebody has a group that that are interested in doing the mental health first aid, then I can organise a workshop for their group. So I'm not holding too many public ones per se. I am involved in one of the things that I do is, as a sole trader, I do actually contract to other organisations as well. So I'm involved in one program that's really a big project that's Deakin University are running at the moment. So it's a research project which might be of interest to some of your listeners, because it's actually, it involves education for financial service professionals, where they actually get not just mental health first aid, which is in itself worth a few $100s if you were to go and do that, pay an instructor to do that, because the e-learning costs us a fair bit. So that training is free for these financial service professionals that sign up for the research project with Deakin University, and they also get some additional sessions which really fleshes out the learning. It teaches people about communication skills to use, and how essentially really how to help financial service professionals with getting people to feel comfortable enough to, I guess, share if they are struggling, and be open to hearing from the financial service professional about, ways that they can, get support. So it's really giving the financial service professionals some skills to enhance their role. So hopefully not putting an extra burden on their shoulders, but rather actually making their job, if anything, a bit easier, because there's a strong connection between financial difficulties, problems, and mental health problems. And so often a client will be more inclined to talk about their financial service professional, such as their accountant, about what's going on for them, about the level of stress that they're experiencing, etc., than they are going to feel comfortable going to their doctor in the first instance. So so this particular project, I'm actually one of the trainers that is training through another organisation that Deakin have engaged for this project. And so, Counting on You is the name of the project. I can put that in the show notes. And so any financial service professionals, Australian obviously, that are interested, that haven't heard about it or haven't, paid much attention to it, they might want to check that out. So that's one thing that I'm involved in. So that involves a lot of, obviously, online. It's all online, as you can imagine. And so a lot of online delivery that I'm doing is around that. And so even though I've said if people want to put a group together, that I'm happy to train them, a lot of my work is directly with organisations. So they're my main sort of clients, where organisations that want to build up their workforce to have mentally healthy practices and to have people in there that can support their peers, the people in their team. But what I find is that the best clients are the ones that actually have a culture of really putting their, money where their mouth is, and really taking on board this kind of, how can I say?
Like being proactive
and but this attitude of it having to be something that is from all happening at all levels. So it's really got to be the leaders in the organisation really have to be behind it. Anybody can do a mental health first aid course or sign up their staff to do a mental health first aid course, but at the end of the day, if the organisation doesn't support it with their culture within the organisation, or doesn't perhaps put in measures to keep the professional development happening, or to provide appropriate support for the mental health first aiders that they've trained up, then it's really just potentially a ticker box exercise. Right?
Yeah. It's just a trending thing, just to tick off.
And really, to be honest, there is, if you really, it is actually something that is actually really important to consider, is that there are ramifications if it's not a mentally healthy workplace. So if the culture is counterproductive to a person staying mentally well, or having the choice to disclose about their mental health, then you can even have issues around workers' compensation, around work health and safety issues, and such a thing called psychological safety, that in fact employers do have a responsibility to provide. They have a responsibility to provide a workplace that does consider their psychological safety. So, in
that's
terms of
awesome.
Their responsibilities.
So
sorry, I did that thing again that Sarah said that I do, but you asked. And
no, it's good. And you've given us extra info in there, like that whole, I was thinking like the whole top-down idea.
Yes,
so that
exactly.
was kind of
top-down idea. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that, a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing you talk about that as well. So we'll definitely pop that into the comments. Tanya, for our next episode, I'm going to tell you what we're doing, because you may want to test it out with us as well. Sarah and I are going to be, drum roll, Sarah, what are we going to be doing?
We're going to be, I'm going to say,
scared.
talking about self-compassion, let me try and pick my words as self-compassionately as I can. We're going to be releasing our sugar, consumption, reducing and casting away our sugar.
And we're going to be awesome. I'm going to do something that's important, and I'm going to just say that we're going to be amazing.
You are going to be amazing. But you know what, ladies, I was going to say there is actually something that I've been working on and doing, and which is I delivered recently for the community. They were actually some workshops sponsored by the City of Parramatta. I did some workshops, including a self-care one, and I'm hearing you now talking about what you would like to do, which is release the sugar from your diet, or like reduce the intake, as it were. And I think that there are so many things that we know that we should do, right? That should word, that famous should word, and so I think that one of the things that I like to think about in terms of how I was saying about reflective practice. What am I doing in terms of self-care? Give yourselves some recognition for the things that you're already doing for your self-care. And then, so say that with diet, where do you, I'm not going to ask you to tell me, but just if you think about from 1 to 10, where do you see your diet at the moment in terms of, healthy, whether it's or not? And Sarah's laughing, but say that you see it as a 5, and you're now saying you want to cut the sugar. So obviously there's a reason why you want to cut the sugar, right? So in your mind, because, I know that I will feel less sluggish, or I know this, or I know that, the reasons. And so where are you hoping, if you were to say, oh, I think my diet is at about a 5 of where I think is, it ideally should be at a 10. So I'm trying to bridge the gap, right? That's what you're doing. You're trying to bridge the gap from your 5 to 10. And so this is the step. And where do you see the sugar taking you? From 5 to 7, from 5 to 6? And so if you have to break it down a little bit more to get you from that 5 to the 6, what can you do? Like, what's your first step? Like, maybe you're just going to, and you know what you're doing, I don't know what you're doing, but, looking at reducing, like, on the first week, you're just going to try and reduce it by X amount, whether you're not going to have sugar in your beverage or whatever it is. So I think that I'm sorry to sort of kind of bring myself back into the conversation, but I guess what I'm saying is it's for me, one of the things is it comes back to that self-compassion, and it comes back to that reframing things about, hey, give yourself credit for the things you are doing to look after yourselves.
Yeah.
And even if you go, well, what I've improved at the moment is that I was just randomly just feeding myself sugary things, and in the back of my head, I knew that I had to improve this, but now I've moved into that intentional space. So at least you've actually already made one step, and you can, give yourself acknowledgement for that as well. And so I kind of see self-care as a lot about acknowledging where we're at, and just thinking about those little improvements in areas that we want to make improvements.
I think that's good as well, because if you do have a fall, and we're all going to fall at some point, you know what I mean, like it's easier to jump back up. Okay, I have a bad day, I stuff myself with chocolate. No one would do that here, would they, Sarah? And then I can just say, okay, it was okay, I got to that 6 or 7 or whatever, and now I'm, I've dropped down a bit, but now I'm going to get myself back up. For me, complete detox and getting rid of stuff works best, but I totally get where you're coming from. But that's going to be our challenge for next week. Maybe we shouldn't use that word challenge though, because
it's our opportunity.
I find that great, that if you're the type of person where it works better for you to do that, like just go from like all or nothing, because I find that actually, I had to do that once. I did, like with the doctor, I went through a bit of a detox, and I have to say for about 8 weeks I had no gluten, no sugar, no dairy. And I did lose like a few kilos in that 8-week period from just doing that. Like I could still eat plenty of food, but just not those particular things. And so, it did work well, but I didn't stick to it. And I think that's going to happen from time to time. We're going to have like what they, like we can look at it as relapse or whatever, but we're going to relapse from time to time. And I think that it's understandable during this time that a lot of people have, been consuming more sugar or, whatever it might be.
Yeah. We're going to be nice to ourselves. But I mean, part of being nice to ourselves, I think, will be, seeing if we can control it a little bit, and then we'll check back in with everyone next time and let you know how we've gone. How do you think you're going to go, Sarah?
I think, the thing that I've realised is that if I do have a day of eating nonstop garbage, which, isn't out of the question at the moment, I don't actually feel mentally or emotionally better, because you kind of go, well, I'm doing this to cope, I've got to drink coping juice and I've got to eat coping chocolate, and there's a coping bowl of ice cream there right there for me, and it's all, in the name of coping. And then at the end of the day, I go, actually, I'm not coping any better for doing that. So that was sort of my aha moment in the last couple of days, to think what I'm telling myself isn't actually the reality of how I feel afterwards, if you know what I mean.
But we can go into more like why we're doing it and what it's, tweaking in our mind when we do that. But we probably need to do that next time. But, there's the whole hormone thing and how, certain foods trigger certain things in us, and that's what I was doing, in terms of eating and everything, but then I was actually creating issues for myself, so
and then you've just got more issues that you've got to try and get on top of, really. I think that's definitely true.
So it's an opportunity for next time. Join us and see how you go in the next couple of weeks, cutting out sugar. We'll touch base with everyone. I've got to say at this point to go in and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out us on our podcast if you're not already. If you're on our podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Otherwise, we're going to be on Facebook soon. We will get to it at some point. So you can check us out on Facebook as well. Check out Tanya's stuff.
And I didn't actually, sorry, when you asked about how you asked how could people contact me. I'll put the details for you to put in the show notes.
We will do that. And Tanya's amazing, so connect with her. And Sarah, what did you say as well?
I was just going to say the Facebook thing I'll put on one of my to-do lists that I was talking about before.
Tick off. Get some enjoyment ticking it off. Thank you so much, Tanya, for joining us.
Thank you,
ladies.
And we'll see you all next time.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.